Right, so we promised you an explainer tonight. And the 64 buses that have been promised by the Cabinet Secretary for Transport, James Macharia, are, if we're to believe the reports from the ministry, on their way. Now, there's been, of course, a lot of fuss about this, especially with the car-free days that has been suspended for a while. But the BRT is part of a wider plan to decongest the city. Many questions still abound. Why it is in the center of the road? How many buses do we need? How will it alleviate the congestion in the city? So let's talk a little bit about BRT and get an understanding of what it is. Now, the BRT is generally a situation that enables the poorest people who depend on public transport to get to work or access their services. In fact, studies show that those who are living in urban areas and who are low-income earners spend up to 30% of their income on transport. That's a huge amount. And this is also because they live in the lower-income areas which are on the outskirts of the city and spend about 2 to 4 hours commuting each day. Now, BRT is one of the simplest things you can actually use. A lot of people talking about rail transport, but BRT, the infrastructure is relatively simple, which means it can actually be completed in a short span of time, 18 months best practice. So even if someone is looking to make this as an election promise, it's something a governor of any city can easily do and perhaps use it for re-election. It can be done very quickly, as opposed to an underground or an elevated rail that can take up to 3 years to build and is much more costly. So now, what are the sort of numbers we're talking about in Nairobi? You've heard this already. Let me just move out here so you can see these numbers. 4.83 million people in Nairobi. Over 7,000 new cars are registered every month, so that's up to about 90,000 cars that are registered every year. So these are the sort of numbers we're trying to move around and move around easily using the BRT. So, what are the key elements of the BRT? Let's take a look at it. One that is most important here are these 5 elements, and I will explain them one by one. One, it's a dedicated right-of-way, as you can see in this image here. Yeah, it's a bus lane only to ensure there are no delays in traffic. There's also busway alignment. This is why it is actually in the center of the road to keep buses away from the busy curb on the left, where you're picking up passengers, people are standing, turning, and they're turning off service lanes into all of the other areas, buildings, residential areas. Also, off-board fare collection, as you saw in Mashirima's story when she visited Dar es Salaam. This is extremely important because it enables things to happen much faster. So there's no conductor on the bus. And, you know, the issue of looking for change and that sort of thing is made a lot faster. So the fare collection is done at the station and not on the bus. There's also how the intersections are treated. There are no turn-offs for traffic that are allowed in this bus lane. So no one can cut through and move right or left. So that is what makes it actually faster. And then the most important is a platform level boarding. And I will show that in the next video. So the station is supposed to be level with the bus, similar to what you see with the SGR train if you have used that. So that helps people with wheelchairs, crutches, those who are visually impaired, and also people with baby strollers. So that is what we're looking at in this country at the moment. And it's all about the infrastructure and whether this is enough. Now, I will be telling you why some people are a little skeptical about the way we have done it when we take a look at the case of what is happening in Sao Paulo, Brazil. We've heard of what happens in Tanzania. We've also heard of efforts to decongest traffic in Lagos. Now, let's talk about Sao Paulo, which has been fairly successful with this one. Sao Paulo in Brazil has a population of 12 million and there's over 5 million vehicles. Now, the public transport system here is managed by a public company but operated by over 50 private companies, which is sort of similar with what we're trying to do here. They have 12,000 buses that ferry 270,000 passengers per day. If you take a look at their population, even what the cabinet secretary here is saying, we need 9,000 buses. They've got 12,000. So you can see the numbers are pretty similar, or basically in line. There's 35 transfer terminals. Now, what is interesting to note about the case in Sao Paulo is they have built the infrastructure for this. They have bike lanes, they have wider pedestrian sidewalks, and they have, yes, a weekly car-free streets program. What is different between Sao Paulo and Kenya? The big thing, public participation. I tell you, what happened in this country is public participation, what I like to call on steroids. Now, they had an online proposal form, they had a draft bill, they had a map where citizens could make comments, but not just that, even person-to-person interactions. They exceeded what was required by law when it comes to public participation. Over 100 public hearings, and the participation reached 25,000 people. In fact, this became such a big deal that when they had their mayoral elections in 2013, the citizens organized themselves, made sure all of the candidates had something to do with this. They then introduced a biking culture. And in fact, Sao Paulo has recognized bicycling as a piece of their transportation in that country. They passed a 16-year strategic master plan that, again, we were talking about that public participation, so people had a say. So, of course, that then concludes in the year 2030. This has worked so well that, in fact, Sao Paulo did win an award for Transportation and Development Policy. That's the ITDP. It's a non-profit organization that works to design and implement high-quality transport systems. They won that Sustainable Transit Award in the year 2014. This is something that has been happening in this country since the year 2003. And by the way, Brazil, or Sao Paulo in Brazil, is not the only city that has a proper bus rapid transport system. So this is what it would entail if we are to go there. How much public participation have we had in this country? And do you feel like your views have been adequately taken in? Also, building in the infrastructure before starting the bus rapid transport system is what is important. Like they say, build the infrastructure and they will come. So that is what the BRT is doing in Sao Paulo. Where will it be with those 64 buses, with eventually the 9,000 buses that we say we will need? Time will tell. Let's take a break. This is Tonight.